we know that when Christian comes back to WWE, he's put with ECW and he becomes the ECW champion. He defended against the likes of William Regal, Tommy Dreamer. He worked with Jack Swagger. But on the last night of ECW, he would drop the title to Ezekiel Jackson to close the company and the brand ECW officially. And Christian winds up making his move to the Raw brand. Eventually bounces back to SmackDown, and unfortunately, he goes through a spat of injuries, including a torn pec. And ironically enough, Edge's retirement would really bolster Christian, and he'd be programmed to replace him against Alberto Del Rio. And you were sort of on and off with the company, but to see him slide into this spot, even if it was as a result of an injury to Edge, this is a cool opportunity for Christian, and he becomes the world champion. And he gets to work with Randy Orton for the title, including a big match at SummerSlam. This is long overdue for Christian at this point. No,
he just was persistent,
persevered through it all.
He persevered, exactly right, and I admire him for that, because that's tough on a guy's attitude, on his how he feels. He'd gone through hell and back, and now he got a chance to stand outside the burns of hell and have some happiness. And I can tell you that, and the fans can agree or not on this one, as they can on anything we say here. He had good matches when he was put in those positions. His matches with Randy Orton was terrific. And it wasn't like Randy was the most experienced guy at that time in the big match scenario. Now he's evolved to that. He's one of the best workers in the world, one of the best talents in the world. But when you go back and look at some of those key matchups, the John Cena's we talked about earlier, the Goldbergs, the Rocks, Christian was an opponent for all those guys for one specific reason: to protect them and to make them look better than they actually are.
We all love to see Christian finally get his flowers and main event some pay-per-views and be the world champion and have some really cool programs. But man, it just feels like at times, if it wasn't for bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. This is when he runs up against those concussion issues that ultimately sidelines his wrestling career for what we felt like at the time would be forever. They're still used by the company to make appearances, do panel discussions, do special interview segments. But it feels like the in-ring career is in the rearview mirror for both he and Edge. So they started a podcast and headed up with the WWE Network even. And it just felt like their in-ring days are behind them. Take a look at that photo there if you're watching with us at grillingjr.com. Left to right, you see Cody Rhodes in his full Stardust attire standing next to Christian and Edge. And they're educating young whippersnappers, young school-grade kids, about some of the really terrible gimmicks through the years. You see Akeem, the African Dream, and the Yeti.
I loved all three of those guys, Conrad. They were all natural wrestling fans.
Yes.
They were very, very happy to be in the positions that they were in. Now, there's a life expectancy, just like on your milk. There's a date. And sometimes the dates aren't printed. Sometimes the dates aren't legible. But everybody's got an expiration date, and they all knew that the way that they were going was not long term. It wasn't built for long term success. And but those guys hung in there, and they were resilient. Resiliency is a key element in the success of a pro wrestler.
In 2020, Edge does get to return to WWE, and not far behind that, Christian appears for an unsanctioned match with Randy Orton, where Ric Flair actually got involved and hit Christian with a low blow, and Christian winds up not taking any bumps, and Orton gets the win. So I think a lot of us felt like, okay, that's it. We won't see him anymore. But we were wrong. The 2021 Royal Rumble, here he comes. Christian is back and highlighted in a major way. He lasts 18 minutes. I make this a big deal because it was a big deal at the time. We thought we'd never see him wrestling again. And he's back, and he's here without a contract. His contract had expired. He's just working the show as a one-off.
I would have never done that. I learned my lesson, the Jeff Jarrett lesson. I would have never done that. I'm not knocking Jeff. I respect him and I admire a lot of things about Jeff. He's resilient and the word I'm looking for. He's a survivor. He's a survivor. He's gone through the territory days and the WWE days and the TNA days, and he's always come out on the other side whole, seemingly to me. And I think that's that's something great to say about him. He's a survivor and a damn good one.
It's a big opportunity for Christian because it becomes a coming out party for the wrestling world. And just 2 months after his surprise return to wrestling at the Royal Rumble for WWE, he debuts at AEW ReEvolution. This was at the height of the pandemic, so it's down at Daly's place.
And he lives in Orlando. It was a perfect marriage, Connie, because he could drive to work.
Yes,
he could drive, and that you don't think about those things all the time, but he could drive to work, and during this COVID bullshit, which we all look back on and say, God, was all that real? And hey, that's why I bought this place on Jacksonville Beach. I didn't want to stay in the hotel with the talent at my age, and I just didn't want to get infected. I didn't feel like I could survive it, so I bought this place so I could kind of keep a little bit of non-contamination, and no regrets here on that deal.
No regrets, indeed. I mean, waking up looking at the beach every day is hard to beat.
It's hard, man. It's so tough. God damn it, that water.
Tony Khan announced before we heard who this mystery guy was going to be at ReEvolution that it was one of his all-time favorite wrestlers. And there was lots of speculation about who it might be. It winds up being Christian. Not only that, but he defeats Kenny Omega for the Impact World title on the premiere episode of Rampage. So we know that AEW started with Dynamite, but eventually they would add a second show. And before that second show was Collision, it was Rampage. And on the very first one, Christian Cage beat Kenny Omega for the Impact World title. Boy, that's a crazy sentence, is it not?
Yeah, and it's impressive. And they had a hell of a match. I'm a big Kenny Omega fan and advocate. I don't know what his likelihood of returning to any long degree at AEW or not. Have no idea. I don't ask. I don't tell. I don't know. But Kenny Omega is a gift to any promotion. And he did he was a very professional in how he conducted himself in losing the title to a brand new guy. Not a brand new guy in the business, but a brand new talent for AEW. And quite frankly, if you're going to introduce somebody, that's the way you do it. You do it to where it's impactful and memorable. And we're talking about it all this time later.